President Trump is in the UK and already making waves, holding a press conference with British Prime Minister Theresa May. The president downplaying the fallout of a controversial interview he gave to British newspaper The Sun, where he accused May of wrecking Brexit and killing off any chance of a vital U.S. trade deal.
I didn't criticize the Prime Minister. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. And unfortunately, there was a story that was done, which was, generally fine, but it didn't put in what I said about the Prime Minister. And I said tremendous things. It's called fake news. She's going to make a decision as to what she's going to do. The only thing I ask of Theresa is that we make sure we can trade, that we don't have any restrictions, because we want to trade with the UK. And the UK wants to trade with us.
The president was met with thousands of protesters and a giant flying Trump baby blimp in London, which he said made him feel unwelcome.
Oh. To make me feel unwelcome. No reason for me to go to London. I used to love London as a city. I haven't been there in a long time. But when they make you feel unwelcome, why would I stay there?
You should say.
One of the biggest issues angering demonstrators is Trump's tough stance on immigration, a subject he also broached during his press conference, warning Europe about the potential risks.
I think it's been very bad for Europe. I think Europe is a place I know very well, and I think that what has happened is very tough. It's a very tough situation. I mean, you see the same terror attacks that I do. I know it's politically not necessarily correct to say that, but I'll say it, and I'll say it loud. And I think they better watch themselves.
Greg, you lived in the UK. Let's start with London. It was amazing to me that many people had the day off to just hang out. And,
on a Friday afternoon. The interesting thing, number one, is the balloon has absolutely no effect because Trump is actually bigger than the balloon. I mean, he actually is, as a phenomenon, wherever he goes, has a greater impact than anything there. So he is the number one story in England. He's the biggest thing in England. He's bigger than Big Ben. I want to make a metaphor, an analogy, if I may, to my friends in England. I live there. I'm an Anglophile. I love the music. In the 1970s, music was plagued by soft rock and progressive rock. Things like Air Supply and Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, just really boring, ponderous music, pompous songs with 15-minute drum solos. Then in 1976, the Ramones from New York, Queens, went to England and played. And what happened? Destroyed that whole scene, and all these punk bands started. The Clash, The Damned, the Sex Pistols. Thousands of new bands happened. Sound familiar? Donald Trump is the Ramones of politics. And what he's done is what punk did to music, Trump is doing to the entire political scene. He's brutal, blunt, game-changing, but he's elementally true. You may not like punk rock, but the messages in the songs were true. They were 3 minutes, 2 minutes of truth. That's what you're seeing. This is the first punk rock president.
Is that the metaphor you said was going to blow our minds?
Yes, in fact, I got it from a buddy of mine. My buddy Paul.
Oh,
he emailed me last night and said, he's a punk rock president. And I go, yes.
Punk rock president. I mean, I like a country music president, too.
You had one. That's G.W. Bush.
That's
true. I mean, he does kind of rage against the machine.
Rage against the machine is true. Do you want to carry this metaphor forward?
I will, because I was actually thinking of something similar, because everyone focuses on the way President Trump says things, but the way he says it makes you focus on what he's saying. For instance, if President Trump hadn't said that Germany was held captive by Russia, we would be talking about something like the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is important because it does, in fact, give Russia leverage over Germany and other European nations. So it is something important, especially at a time, when we're all talking about Russia aggression and we're looking at putting sanctions on Russia. It sort of undercuts that narrative and that objective if they're funneling money to Russia through the pipeline. But we wouldn't be talking about that if he didn't say it that way. Or you look at immigration. All you have to do is look at the Paris attackers, the ease that they're able to get around Europe, go back to Syria, come back, hiding in places like Molenbeek, which are the epitome of a failure of integration of immigration policies and the lack of assimilation. So, I mean, he says these things, and at the face it seems outlandish, but would we be talking about the substance if he didn't say it in that way?
I don't know, actually. But maybe not. I was just thinking, though, about the Theresa May comments, Jesse. And so he gave the interview to The Sun. They released the audio. He said it was fake, but I do think that he actually maybe felt a little bad that she felt slighted in her own paper while he was there.
I think he did feel bad. He felt a human emotion. that is possible with this president, and a lot of people think he's just this maniacal robot that doesn't care about people's feelings, but the way he was kind of over the top praising her as this strong, decisive ally that is a big winner. And when he calls you a winner,
it might work out in her favor because now we're going to get a trade deal, it looks like.
Exactly. And remember when President Obama said that, if you guys do Brexit, we're going to get in the back of the line on the trade. He's done the opposite, and he's reached his arm across the Atlantic and offered an olive branch there. I thought meeting the Queen was the bigger thing today, just the visual that was pumped into the world. And when we see this on television, people enjoy the spectacle of it. They like the red and the colors, and she's in the blue, and the president's trying to walk like this. And it's just very formal, and it shows how the president was respected. I know the president personally enjoys that kind of pomp and circumstance. He enjoys the respect, them rolling out the red carpet. But it really solidified the special relationship today. You also saw the image of him holding Theresa May's hand, and then they had tea with the Queen, and he probably gave him a big boost of adrenaline at the end of this. And at the end of it, when you look at it, the European countries did make commitments to boost their defense spending, and NATO is invigorated, I believe, and more focused on the task at hand and on confronting Russia. So I think at the end of the day, the trip to Europe was positive, and we've had great economic news this week. Strzok humiliated himself.
We're going to get to all that, Jesse.
It has been a very good week for the president.
We just talked about that. Juan, go ahead.
Wow, you're something. But I will say, I didn't anticipate Greg making an argument for immigration. That we should send the kids from Queens over to London. Why not? Right?
It changed the world.
But Trump said that in fact these immigrants are tearing the fabric of Europe and London apart, and he goes after the mayor. And by the way, Jesse, he says he loves Theresa May. You know what? He's the one that gave the interview. It's not like somebody forced him to talk to the Sun newspaper. He gave an interview that was hostile towards a leader he was about to sit down. He created the chaos. He created this situation.
Right, and then he created the making up together.
Yes.
So
and
that's how he rolls.
Ultimately, Juan, that might work out in Theresa May's favor, right? Because
it could, but
it put him a little bit on the defensive, and it put him in a position of being quite amiable. And so because she was gracious, and she was like, oh, no problem, it's fine. Like very British, stiff upper lip. No problem. She's going to walk away with possibly getting a trade deal when earlier in the week her government was falling apart.
I don't know. I think Boris Johnson left. I don't know that how close they are to actually falling apart. He says she's a strong leader. He wishes there were more leaders. I don't know. But I will say he goes over there. He stirs the pot. Then he tries to unstir the pot. Again, he is, the be-all of the whole story. But to me, you can't get over the fact that, 100,000 people in the streets of London. I mean, forget the crying baby.
Really, they were arguing. Let me get Greg in here. The London protests, as I saw Benjamin Hall earlier reporting in that 2 o'clock hour, was that they were really campaigning against capitalism.
No, it's true. A lot of this, this is what happens with left-wing protests, is it becomes a grab bag of everything. You saw women dressed up as characters from The Handmaid's Tale, which is the fictional miniseries about a misogynistic dystopia where women are forced into sexual slavery. Now, I doubt any of those women dressed up as those handmaids ever did anything about the mass rape in England, what has to do with is it Rotterdam? The sexual slavery that took place there was an absolute scandal that went on for years, and I don't see any signs for that. Now, but to Juan's point, everybody hates his style. Everybody hates his style. That's why he's punk rock. But the New York Times even had to admit today, was it today's paper? The headline was, Trump got everything Obama ever asked for.
I don't see that headline, but it sounds like a good one.
That's not fake news.
That's one of the things in the New York Times I agree with.
But I think you guys understand, in a way, he's not even playing to the Europeans. He's not playing to Theresa May.
Everybody plays to their domestic audience.
Right. So he's playing to an American base. And when he brings up the immigration issue, he's trying to stir that up here. I think he talks about terrorism.
There's truth to it as well, though.
There's no truth. I mean, are you kidding? Europe. I mean, what did Theresa May say as she was standing there next to him? Immigration has been great for Great Britain. That's what she said.
But Juan, all of from Germany to Denmark, to Sweden, to all of these populists are rising up because of
correct. So I think he's playing. Hang on. He's playing to populist nationalist sentiments that he would like to excite here at home for the midterms. But that is not. It's not the case that you are breaking apart Europe and the fabric is being torn, and that the mayor of London is responsible for all this terrorism. I hope he says that to Vladimir Putin about poisoning people in London.
Jesse, one of the signs that they had today that I thought was kind of preposterous, it said, "No to Trump, no to war." Like, well, what war? Like, Trump is really not the warmongering
Just
president.
the war on the press.
Yeah,
That's
I
the only
don't
war
understand
he's
that.
successful prosecuting.
Like, what
I
was that
spoke to
about?
someone
Except for that one article today.
Yeah, except for the New York Times. I spoke to someone today who said these are not, the downtrodden, lower class people that have been crushed by the Industrial Revolution.
They're working.
These are people named Alistair that come from snobby backgrounds and went to nice prep schools that can afford to take the Friday afternoon off.